Depth Spelunking has just released its demo last night for the public, and it's been pretty good so far. For those who don't know what Depth Spelunking is, it's a roguelike game on Roblox that is heavily inspired by My Salvation and The Binding of Isaac. Though, to be honest, the only Isaac aspects that I see in the game so far are the D6 being in the shop and items having qualities. It's not like there are double deals or anything after you complete a floor, though that might actually be a cool idea. Maybe you would trade something like your speed or your stamina for an item. Anyway, here are my thoughts on the game so far. The lobby is pretty cool and reminds me a lot of the Minus Descendants remake lobby before it got cancelled. It's got plenty of secrets and people to talk to, just like Elevation. I love lobbies in games where you can interact with a lot of stuff. Addition Abstraction is a great example of this because there's so much to do in that lobby, and it's honestly one of my favorites. There's so many cool things in that lobby, like quest lines, a whole bunch of customization, cutscenes, and me, kind of. Anyway, Depth Spelunking checks all these boxes for an Elevation type lobby, with a lot of interaction, secrets. Oh, and don't tell anybody about this, but the big door you can open without pushing all 9 buttons. But you wouldn't do that, right? You're not a coward. The shop has some pretty good items, but it's kind of limited, but this does get a pass because it's still the demo. Oh, and shout out to whoever put the Nintendo 64 symbol on the wall. I really appreciate it. Another thing to note is that when the game first came out, talking to the people in the lobby were important because they give you info on enemies, as there was no bestiary when the game first launched. Though I hope that in the future the bestiary will be like Elevation, where you have to slowly build up info on an enemy. Another great feature that this game has is leaderboards, which I think is such a good idea, and I really miss the ones that were originally in Elevation. That would make me grind the shit out of the game, man. One thing I do wish the lobby had though was the statistic page, sort of like Addition Abstraction, because it's just cool to look at so many stats like that as you play. You should also probably be able to leave the elevator because right now if you go inside you just can't get out. Also, I don't know if I'm the only one who misses this, but the XP system from Cancelled Descendants was such a cool feature, and I just want this back in one of these games. Even if it does nothing, just make it give like some cash or something when you level up. We love meaningless slumbers go up. That's the whole point of the bestiary. Moving on to the gameplay, it spices it up a lot by making you do tasks instead of just pushing buttons. At first I thought tasks were going to be annoying, but they're actually not that bad if you get used to it. It's a real refresher from just pressing E and being done. As of now, there's only 4 tasks though, which are the valves, the wires, generators, and codes. The valves are like Ruin's wrench puzzle, but much easier, and that's better to be honest. Wires are just like Among Us wires, where you have to match the colors or shapes. Generators are like Dead by Daylight, and gives you 35% more power when you complete it, so it might be better to do this one later on the floor. The codes are really interesting because you actually have to find a piece of paper on the ground with either numbers or color combo, which spawns on the ground randomly, and then you can complete this task after, which I think is kind of a cool mechanic. I do wish that there were more tasks, but it's a demo, so it's not that big of a deal. I do wish that they had more indicators when they are complete, because playing with other people, it can be confusing sometimes. Codes have a green light of completion, and the generator has smoke coming out of it. Maybe the wires and valves could have some like electricity particles or something that could be coming out of it when it's finished. I also think it would be kind of cool if when you hit 0% power and you do a generator, the lights would come back on, because I usually find myself doing the generator last because I always miss it in the dark. After all the tasks are completed, you have to go to the elevator and go to the next floor. I wish it was more like Elevation though, where if everyone was in the elevator, it would just go instead of waiting, because most enemies don't even care if you sit still in the elevator. So I usually just sit around and alt-tab, looking at Discord or something, waiting. It could even be an upgrade like Addition Abstraction, where the timer goes faster if everyone's inside. Speaking of upgrades, they are way different in this game than any other. You have to first find an upgrade machine and enable it to get an upgrade during the transition period. I'm honestly okay with this because of now, the upgrades aren't that great, so having it more uncommon is fine. 2 more of the core mechanics are stamina and battery. These are pretty self-explanatory. Sprinting will make you go fast at the cost of stamina, and the stamina regenerates really fast. I think they could probably balance this out by maybe having the Cry of Fear mechanic, where crouching makes your stamina regenerate faster and make the normal regen a bit slower. Battery is just like Elevation, where some items will use battery and you can just get it back with the floor upgrades. As mentioned earlier, you can crouch in this game, which is very helpful when it comes to multiple enemies in the game, which will be mentioned later. The final main mechanic is items, which are very similar to Elevation, where you have to find consumables and materials on the floor. Though as of now, there is no crafting in the game, so if you find materials, either just ignore them, or just put them in your backpack with Q. The other items are simple, either giving you stamina, stamina regen, or more speed. As of right now, there are not a lot of common enemies in the game, coming in at about 7 common enemies. The main thing about these guys is just a lot of them are the same thing. Lurker, Warden, and Shrieker have basically the same model, but just with different colors and slight changes. It also feels like all the enemies are completely blind, because sometimes I just walk past them and they don't even care. Though I think that might be for the better, because getting an enemy off you in this game is so annoying. I do like the stealth aspect in some parts, as the stealth mechanic in the testing version of Elevation, if you were standing in the dark, enemies couldn't see you that well. I think that was really cool. I think that they did do drone really well because there's so many enemies in Elevation that just know where you are at all times, and it's so annoying. But they pretty well balanced it out, because in this game, he's pretty slow. Boreas is just a minor inconvenience, which I think is fine because they're pretty easy to avoid. Mimic is pretty cool in this game as they chat while they're walking around, which is completely obsolete if you're in solo or in a VC, but it's still much better than the weird walk that they do in Elevation. I think for now it's just that there aren't many common enemies in the game. Most of them act similar where they're chill unless you move around a little bit or if you're right on top of them. This makes it feel a little bland, so maybe if they could see you from further, but they were easier to get away from, it would be better, but I'm not completely sure. It's hard to say because if you're doing a task, it would make them see you a lot more, so I don't know if this would balance it out completely. They do have bosses in this game where the main difference is you have to do more tasks on that floor with a unique map. And I also know that there are sins in this game, but the only one I really know about is Sloth, where you have to do 9 tasks in 4 minutes, which is hell on solo, and should probably scale per player. I've never gotten him myself, so not gonna lie, I don't know how these people are getting him on like floor 4. That's about all I have for the enemies right now. This game in the current state has the same issue that Midas Elevation did on release, where there are very few maps and a lot of them have the same theme, making it pretty bland. The balancing is also pretty confusing because these maps are either really big or really small. There doesn't seem to be a real in-between. I think it should be like Elevation where big maps only spawn on high player counts, because the big maps in solo make the pacing really slow. This is probably just another case of it being a demo. It's probably just going to solve itself like eventually Elevation did. Though something that is pretty cool about the maps is that there are randomized doors that might be harder to notice at first, but sometimes places that usually will have a doorway can be blocked off sometimes, making maps a little bit more unique. I doubt this would be added since it's hella annoying to build something like this, but maybe if you go down a layer, like from surface to depths, the maps get altered slightly. Think about how Room World turns into Ruin World as you get later into the game in Descendants. Overall, I think this game just needs a little bit more time in the oven, which is expected from a demo. It just needs a bit more of everything to help push it forward. Some other nitpicks I have about this game is about the proximity chat. I feel like it isn't really needed because for private servers, it's not that big of a deal, but for public servers, it kind of just sucks. I know that there's another item that lets you talk to people, but other people have to have it, and it just doesn't seem necessary to have in the game. Though I do think it might mess with the mech a bit if it was removed. I also think that getting a notification when you pick up stuff is a little annoying, and I would just rather it be replaced with something like Elevation, where you hold the item to see the tooltip. I also want to see more Binding of Isaac stuff in this game, because there are like 600 items in that game, and I'm sure some of them would fit right in. Maybe they could even make a mechanic like keys, where you find them on the ground and they can open chests. Anyway, this game in its current state is alright, and not in a bad way. It's still enjoyable to play, it just kind of runs off short. Mainly due to it being a bit bare bones at the moment, but that's what demos are for. I have high hopes for this game because I think it's going to be really good when it releases. That's all I have for this game right now, and I know that this video is completely different from what I normally make. I just kind of wanted to, because I had some motivation to do it, and I actually enjoyed making the video. So I might make some like this maybe in the future. I don't know. Hope that the feedback didn't suck ass. And yeah, bye.